Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from Colby. Rods to the Hog's Head. 40 Rods to the Hog's Head by TERA MELOS. A really fun live performance of one of their best songs. So let's dive into this. This is them live at the Media Club, and check out what TERA MELOS is bringing to the table today. We're temporarily in 6/8. Yeah, there's a lot of really fun time wonkery going on here. Alternating like 4/4, 13/8, 4/4, 15/8, I think is what they were doing. A lot of this is just going on feel. Is leaning into the muscle memory of the riff, then counting it out. I like the inversion where the drums were going gentle and the guitar was bonkers, and now the guitar is nice and smooth, and our drummer's going crazy. Yeah, so really nice way to introduce the looping concept and now to build on it. Oh, the drummer's shifting up the accents here. Oh, he still got more. No function of time here. The snare roll is effectively free time. The bass is just doing its own thing, not in time with the guitar. A lot of the instances they do this during the noisier bits. It's interesting they all came in on this though. That's there is a lot of stuff to unpack here. And I'm not going to be getting too much into the music. We're going to talk about the sound, we're going to talk about the performance. But the music is it's a bit over my head. um, and it is 12 and a half minutes of purely linear, bordering on jam concepts that really would require multiple listens, possibly transposition, to really understand what's happening in the moment to moment. So we're going to talk about more surface level concepts than anything deep on this analysis here. One quick thing though before we get into this proper, I I was kind of surprised there at the end. We got a close up on the bass and on the what is that thing called? The little metal guard? Is it the pick guard or something like that? That's right under the strings where you would pluck them or pick them or whatever you term you want to use for it. It was recessed though, and the pickups were actually pulled down further away from the strings than usual. At least it looked recessed to me, which is interesting. Can't have ever seen a bass like that. If you have any information on that, please let me know. My bass does not have that. My bass it's level, uniform, all the way across that guard. Um, all right, so let's dig into some music here. First up, I think what's most interesting here is the synchronization of our band. I pointed out there at the end, this was only one of many instances of this where the band seemed to all be in their own worlds and yet without any large cue. They all came in at the right time for the big unison part where time signature and tempo meant something again and notes meant something and everybody was trying to stay in time with and in harmony with the rest of their bandmates. How? I mean, the only thing I can think is that they're all counting something together. They may not be playing in the same time signature or the same tempo, but they are all feeling the time pass. So instead of saying, 4 bars of rest, which could mean different things in different tempos and time signatures, they would say, do what you want for 30 seconds, and they all have phenomenal internal clocks. This seems unlikely. So I'm going to land on two other possibilities. One, there is a cue hidden in somebody's instrument, and that person who gets the cue could be different for every situation, right? For that final one, the drummer's just sitting back there doing these wild snare rolls. It could be that they do start moving into something a bit less freeform and a bit more rigid with like the last 5 seconds of it. And when you hear that, you're like, oh, this is our new tempo and time signature. There's that point where the guitarist goes into their solo. It was like 4 or 5 minutes into the video. It was just them, right? And maybe there's something that they play that's, the cue. Hey guys, get ready. This is the end of my solo. We're going to be moving into the next unified section. That's probably what's happening. That would be my guess. The other situation is that no single part of this is unexpected. None of it is improvised. Everything is particularly and specifically played according to what would be on sheet music. And if I watched the same show or the same song at a different show, it would be the exact same song. Possible. Highly technical and difficult to pull off. There is a lot of stuff in here that is just, well, if it was pre-composed, phenomenal job. There's just too many parts in here where it feels like we're purely going on improv. There's just no way that some of this stuff is pre-composed. Um, And I say no way. I mean, like, very little chance. A lot of this just works better if it was improvised on the spot with some sort of cue to bring people back in. So, those are the three things that could be happening here. And I think there's cues built into the music so that they can improvise and do their own thing. But there's, little flags. Hey, we're coming back up to a unified section. Get ready for that. Um, And I think there were a couple of times when I saw the guitarist like look around and kind of give like a heads up or like a raised eyebrow or like bring the guitar up, some sort of physical cue, but it didn't happen all the time, which is what made it more impressive. It was almost like a magic trick, right? And I'm over here trying to solve it. How did they do that? How did they make the swords disappear or whatever, right? And that's the puzzle I'm looking at. How did they know when to come in without any communication? And the communication, much like a good magic trick, is hidden through sleight of hand. It's tucked away from the audience's view. Now, that's just one impressive aspect. Another thing that I was really intrigued by was sound. And I think this is going to be like the big takeaway on this, because this is what these guys do very differently than a lot of other groups. They've got the They've got the shoegaze thing going on where they're always looking down at their pedals. Now, granted, musically, this is not shoegaze in the slightest, but the whole concept of always looking down at your feet so that you can push pedals all day long while you're playing. And through this, though, they achieve so many different sounds, and I kind of wonder how they came upon any of this. I mean, it has to be trial and error. Maybe once you do it for so long, you kind of have a bit of like internal direction. You just kind of get a gist for everything, and you're like, oh, if I do this and this and this, it's going to sound like this, and maybe you're pretty close to it. Maybe you pictured it perfectly in your mind, once you get used to this stuff. But to me, it's wizardry, right? There's so many effects. I mean, we saw one dude jump between like five of them. just back to back and pulling out all these different sounds and creating those those loops, right? Just like playing a simple, I mean, like they had the looping part, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just playing a note and then it just keeps going forever, like you turned a synth tone on and just left it. Um, and it's like got all this reverb and fuzz to it. It's just like it's such there was like a phaseriness to it. One of them sounded like a literal laser beam. Um, there's a lot of inventiveness, right? And it's not just in the uh the pedals, right? The hardware side. We also see a lot of this inventiveness in the actual performance of it, actually playing this stuff. Um, Different ways that the guitarist strums or hits the strings or just creates vibration on the strings, even if it's not with a pick. We see the same thing with the bassist in how they choose to go about creating the vibrations on their instrument as well, when they choose to move the entire instrument, when they switch from finger picking to using a pick, and when to just like hit the strings. Sometimes it looked like there were a few moments he just used the palm of his hand. Um, and then that combined with the pedals and all that, like there's just a lot of creativity going into this. Even moments that seem to be primarily garbly-gook nonsense, when if they were played on an acoustic guitar or an electric that wasn't going through all, it's a clean electric guitar, they would sound just like noisy garbage. You know, I'd even say that there are a couple of moments when the guitarist was just, playing whatever and not even really getting great contact from the string to the finger. So they're kind of muted. A couple times you get a harmonic. Sometimes we don't even get the tone out at all. It almost feels like they missed that note. It's all intentional, of course. The purpose is to just create noise, not necessarily to find specific pitches. Again, coming from the assumption this isn't all pre-composed. um, but when you use this as a moment to create unique timbres out of the instrument itself that get fed into interesting combinations of effects, you end up with something that is noisy. Yes, you're not going to remove that. It's not going to magically become this, beautiful consonant, harmonious style of music, but it does escalate into something that really works. It creates a palatable noise out of the chaos. And once again, it's that creativity. There are very few people who are going to pick up the guitar, look at their idols who, are playing, perfectly and studying and perfecting their craft of, mastering this instrument in a traditional sense. I mean, maybe there's these same types of peoples, your Van Halens or your to be a more modern man. What's the dude's name from Animals as Leaders? Tosin Abasi, right? I'll get one from like both generations. How's that sound? Um, there just don't seem to be those types of people for this noisy stuff, right? Even if you look at more consonant acoustic stuff, um, you have people like John Mayer and who's that guy who does like the cool like finger picking stuff? We checked out one of his things a while ago, and he's like messing with like tuning knobs and like I don't know. Anyways, there's like a lot of really cool consonant technique masters out there that you can look up to. I don't know many noisy popular guitarists you can be like, I want to be like him. I mean, maybe there are, and maybe that's who inspired, these folk here. But at least in my experience, I don't know anybody like that, like the Van Halen of noise. So a lot of it would have to be, you pick this up, you see how most 99% of people are using it, and you're like, I'm gonna master something else. And then if after that, it's complete um, exploration mode. you're really trying to find new ways to use this instrument. And it's got to be daunting. It really does. Even if you have somebody to look up to kind of influence a sound, much like a lot of electronic music, this is about crafting your own. You have to make these sounds before you can use them, and then you have to use them in inventive ways. And I find that whole process just, really fascinating. It is amazing to listen to this, even though I didn't enjoy it. There were a few parts that I was really getting into. There were some fun turns in there that put a smile on my face. But for the most part, it was noisy stuff, and I'm not a big fan of noise or jams. And this was both of them. This was some noisy jam. But I can't help but appreciate and be fascinated by the entire approach to crafting music like this. And they're obviously doing right. They're doing something right. They had a pretty big, show here, even though it looked like a small venue. Um, Experimental, avant-garde, punky, technical rock, and they got they got a pretty big audience for that. So that's a very niche thing. I'd say they're doing well with what they're doing. Now, I want to talk about what I think is the rock, the foundation of this all, and it's the drummer. Right? The drummer doesn't have pedals. All of the drummer's unique elements come from the way that they choose to use the instruments they have, the voices they have available to them, that's no different than any other drummer. And what I really like is this drummer's voice. There is a lot of typical ideas in here, especially when we're looking at the moments when our drummer leans hard into being the metronome, the human metronome, and just locking in that time for the rest of the band. Even in those moments, there's a lot of expressiveness to how they're played, a lot of dynamic shifting, a lot of accent shifting. There's these little embellishing ideas that get tossed in every once in a while. It isn't just straight metronome playing. And honestly, I'd even say the metronome playing is kind of the accent to the the character specific playing, what this person, their voice, their unique voice as a drummer. I think that shines through a lot more, even in the moments when it feels like they're keeping the time for everyone else. It feels like keeping the time is the afterthought to all of their extra ideas that they want to toss in there. So even though they don't have all of the hardware tricks that the rest of the band has in order to more fully explore unique sounds, the drummer still brings a lot to the table, and I think that says a lot about them. And I can see why they were picked for the well, not I don't know how the band came together, but I can see why this drummer is part of the band. Um, because their voice, the way they play, the way they understand rhythm and melodic drumming fits in so well with what the band is doing. And I think that's going to wrap this one up. Like I said, I really wanted to touch on the performance and the sound because musically, like I said, it's just kind of a jam. Uh, the ideas just kind of flow, and sometimes they lock back in for a second, but then they diverge into their own ways, and it's just a lot of noisy chaos. It's difficult for me to break that down on a first listen. There might be a lot of really great directional, pre-composed, solid ideas in here that I could, dig into, but I didn't pick up any of that on a first listen. It just felt like three guys having a fantastic time jamming along with each other. And really enjoying the process of making music in real time more so than a song that's supposed to be for the listener. It's very much for them. So those are my thoughts on TERA MELOS's 40 Rods to the Hogshead. What did you think? This was a fascinating listen for me. But did you enjoy it? Anything that stood out to you, anything you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on, let me know down in the comments. Above the comment section is a description box, and in there is a link for Linktree. It'll take you to this menu right here, which has links for everything related to the channel. You can find ways to support the channel, you can find my music, you can find a link to the Discord, and so much more. Go ahead and check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, or ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three. All right, that wraps it up for today. We'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC, as usual. Has that been there the whole time? Whoops. Probably shouldn't have called any attention to it. It's still whatever, I'm leaving it. 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC. We're going to wrap up this week's theme and do some more of that. All right, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.